Good morning, and thank you for joining our session on effort certification training.
All right, thanks, Sam, and thank you to the rest of the operations team for providing me the opportunity to speak on effort certification this morning. I appreciate that. There's a lot of hard work that goes into this. First, I wanted to introduce our team quickly. So we have 3 central effort analysts, team lead, myself, and our director that work on the effort certification process. So you can reach out to us with any questions, anything like that. Today, we're going to ultimately try to gain a better overall understanding of the effort certification and effort reporting processes in preparation for the upcoming effort certification period. Here are the specific areas of focus that we'll cover today, broken into 2 major categories. We'll look at the foundations of effort and then effort certification. And we'll cover these specific areas in the coming slides. So we'll kick things off today with the foundations of effort, and we'll specifically start with an effort overview. So what is effort? Effort is the portion of time, and you can see time is a key word there, of spent on a given professional activity and expressed as a percentage of the total professional activity for which an individual is employed by the university. I have an example in the coming slide that will explain that a little better. But first, we'll get into things that we want to consider when calculating effort. So effort is calculated based on a reasonable estimate of time, again, keyword. So we understand, as a central office, the federal government understands that it's unreasonable for folks who are working in research to track every minute of every day, and that's not the expectation. The expectation is a reasonable estimate of time spent on those activities, so everyone understands that. The effort calculation is not based on a standard 40-hour work week. It's based on the total amount of time that person spends during the effort reporting period of performance. So each person's effort calculation and the total hours worked may be different from another, and it may differ from period to period. So we also want to make sure that when we're calculating effort, that it totals 100%, meaning all activities that person is paid for or that they work on are included in that effort calculation. And so there are a few main exclusions to that, and they're going to be overload or additional duty payments, stipends, and other compensation for outside activities such as consulting. So here's the example that I mentioned before for effort calculation. So we have an employee here who earns a base salary of $100,000. This person is also being paid a supplement, maybe they're department chair or director. So we're using the total institutional base salary as the amount for the effort calculation there. And that's going to be $120,000. We now go to the employee, we say, what's a reasonable estimate of the total hours you worked for this 6-month period, January to June? They say 1,200 hours. Okay, so now we've determined our 2 main components, total salary and total hours worked. We also talk with that employee and we confirm they worked on 2 awards and various non-sponsored responsibilities. So now we also ask that employee to reasonably estimate the time spent on each activity. They say 600 hours on award A, 400 hours award B, 200 hours on non-sponsored. So now we have all the information we need to do the actual effort calculation. And to do that, we're going to take the total hours committed or effort committed to award A, and we're going to divide that by total hours worked overall, and that's going to give us 50%, as you can see in the calculation there. We're going to do that calculation for award B and the non-sponsored, and we get 33% and 17% respectively. Time drives the effort calculation, so we are going to use those percentages then to determine how much salary should have been charged each award. So that calculation is to take the IBS 120,000, multiply that by the effort percentage we just calculated. In this case, looking at award A, that's 50%. And we see that we should have charged $60,000 to that award. We would then review the actual amounts charged to that award. And if there's a discrepancy there between the actual amount and what should have been charged, we know that we need to make an adjustment to get that amount to 60,000, because I reiterate that time drives the effort calculation. Now we'll talk a little about the effort life cycle. Two main questions we're going to answer here, which are, how do we propose effort at the pre-award stage, and how do we manage effort during the post-award process? Here's a quick overview of the effort life cycle. So it first starts with preparing the proposal budget. So we're estimating effort and salary there. Once we receive the notice of grant award, we're then going to actually commit effort and actually charge salary. And we're going to be communicating with the sponsor by billing for that, submitting progress reports, that type of thing. And eventually we're going to attest to the sponsor that those amounts were accurate. And we're going to do that by certifying effort or going through the effort certification process. How do we propose effort during the pre-award stage? So we want to ensure that proposed effort is consistent with the actual effort each individual is expected to expend on the sponsored project. So we're making sure our estimates are accurate. So we want to be talking with the PI, other leadership on the project, to make sure the personnel are being proposed accurately. We also want to ensure that the effort for the PI is sufficient to show the sponsor that they are going to be able to oversee the financial and scientific aspects of that project. So that's important to make sure we're able to do that and prove that to the sponsor. It is important to note, in talking about PI effort, that there's a minimum effort required by the university for the PI, and that's 1% effort during at least one effort reporting period, so 1 6-month period during that award. So we would expect to see that on every proposal at minimum. Now, how do we propose salary during that pre-award stage? So again, as in our example, we're using that institutional base salary as the starting point for calculating effort and proposing salary. The IBS includes all amounts paid to that individual by the university. So as in the example, it includes supplements for administrative activities. So if they're a department chair or institute director, we should include that. It doesn't include overload payments, additional duty payments, stipends, that type of thing. And then we also want to ensure that we are meeting any mandatory cost share requirements based off for the salary caps for the sponsors and that type of thing, as that cost share is considered effort. So how do we manage effort during the post-award process? So at the time that we receive the notice of grant award, as I mentioned before, we've estimated the effort levels and the salary at the pre-award stage. Now we've received that award, and those estimates become commitments that the sponsor expects us to fulfill. So we need to be monitoring that effort commitment during the post-award process by talking with the PI, talking with staff, and ensuring that the actual time they're committing to that project is accurately reflected by the salary that's being charged there. If those effort levels are inconsistent with the salary being charged, then we should make adjustments to get the salary distribution to match the effort. The way we adjust that salary distribution is through EPARs or PATs. So those EPARs and PATs also come to our team to be reviewed and approved in the Office of Sponsor Programs. And it's important to note there that when you're preparing those EPARs and PATs, that sometimes we need prior approval from the sponsors. A major area where we would need that prior approval is if the PI or other key personnel will be absent for a continuous period of 3 months or more, or will reduce effort approved at the time of the award by greater than 25%. If that's going to happen, make sure you work with your SPS in the Office of Sponsor Programs and the sponsor to obtain that prior approval. We'll now move on to the effort reporting portion of the foundations of effort. And we'll start with an effort reporting overview. So effort reporting is the process by which we review salary and effort after the fact to assure that the salary charge was reasonable in relation to the effort expended on the project. So this is the process by which we provide assurance to the sponsor that those commitments that we agreed to, that we fulfilled those. And it's also important to note that anyone who works on a sponsor project is going to have an effort statement that needs to be reviewed and certified so that we can ensure we confirm to the sponsor that we did what we said we were going to do. Why is effort reporting important? It's important because labor expenses typically represent the majority of the direct costs charged to sponsor projects. And since they're the majority of the direct costs, they're heavily scrutinized by auditors. And there have been institutions that have had audit findings that could negatively impact the research institution. So we want to avoid that. It's also important because at the time of proposal, we're estimating, and we're prospectively setting up those proposals. So the effort reporting is important, so we can go back and retrospectively review that and attest to the sponsor that we fulfilled our commitments. So ultimately, effort reporting provides an internal control mechanism for UNC certifiers and administrators to go back and review salary charges. Effort reporting is also important because it provides an mechanism of internal control by which UNC certifiers and external auditors can evaluate our effort systems and the actual time devoted to sponsored projects. So in essence, the effort reporting allows us to summarize in a common language for both internal constituents and external auditors the effort reporting process in an understandable way. So we'll now move on to the effort certification portion of the presentation. And we'll kick that off with an overview of the effort certification timeline. So effort certification occurs biannually in 2 6-month periods of performance from January to June and July to December. After those periods occur, we open effort statements for certification. And that process starts off with a 14-day pre-review period in which we ask effort coordinators to go in and review effort statements for issues and to make adjustments and corrections. We're also asking during that time for primary effort coordinators to provide proxy information. After that 14-day pre-review period, we open effort statements for certification for 60 days. So that's when certifiers can actually go in and certify their statements. And then on day 31 of that 60-day period, escalation begins. We escalate any uncertified statements to primary effort coordinators, then department chairs and directors, and finally research deans in an effort to make sure we get everything certified on time, because if a statement is not certified on time, all of those sponsored dollars will be moved to a non-sponsored source in the department, which could negatively impact that department's ability to function. So we do have an escalation period, and then after the 60-day period, we understand that there may be some adjustments that are needed. So we do allow 30 days to submit those adjustments to true up those effort statements. We'll now go over the roles and responsibilities of the folks who are part of this process. First of all is going to be the Office of Sponsored Programs. So what does our team do during this process? Overall, we're facilitating the effort certification process. We're monitoring the eCert system to make sure it's functioning correctly. We're notifying campus of any updates to the schedule. We're escalating effort statements. We're answering questions from campus and providing university leadership with information during this time. The certifier has many responsibilities, and it's very important that the certifier understand what's needed from them, as they're the only person who can reasonably estimate the time they actually committed to each activity on the effort statement. So we're wanting them to ensure that they're taking that into account when they're reviewing their effort statement. They're looking at salary distributions and comparing their time commitment to the salary to ensure that those two things reconcile. We're also we also want them to, notify their effort coordinators if something is inaccurate, if they don't see a project or something there, so that they can make changes, and then we want them to certify ultimately before the end of the 60-day certification period. What is the role of the effort coordinator? So the effort coordinator, their roles are broken into kind of two parts. Prior to certification, which I'm referring to as a pre-review responsibility here, we want them to examine the effort report for accuracy. We're trying to determine if there are any issues there. Maybe somebody's percentages are not between the 99 to 101% threshold, and the statement can't be certified for that reason. Maybe there are two effort statements, or there's a project missing. We want them to identify that and make changes. Same with salary distributions versus effort commitments. If we see a discrepancy there, we want to go ahead and make those changes as soon as possible, as that makes this whole process run smoother. After the statement's certified, we want those effort coordinators to review the statement to determine, did the certifier certify the statement with any changes? Did they make a mistake? Something like that. And determine if there are any cost transfers that are needed, and then go ahead and submit those PATs during that 30-day window at the end of the period. The last role we'll talk about is that of the primary effort coordinator. Excuse me. So in addition to performing a similar role as the effort coordinator, the primary effort coordinator is assigned to facilitate the entire process at the department level. So they're responsible for reviewing and working all effort tasks that result from a certifier certifying with any changes to the statement. And they're also the point of contact from our office to provide proxy information, which is an important role, as that helps us facilitate the process. We'll now move into an overview of the actual eCert system in which we use to actually complete certification. Here we have a screenshot of the effort statement as an effort coordinator would see it, or as a certifier would see it. As you can see, there are a lot of parts to this effort statement, and we'll go over each of those in detail in the coming slides. So this is the top left portion of that effort statement, and this is the work list. So if the certifier has been assigned to certify a statement for someone or serve as a proxy, the list of those individuals will be here. And that certifier can then come in, click on these names here, and review those effort statements and certify them, or ask the effort coordinators any questions they may have. So if somebody has a question, how do I certify for someone else? They'll go in their work list, click on that, and they're able to do that certification. The upper right side of the statement is going to show a fair amount of pertinent information about the actual effort statement. So it's going to show the certifier's name. It's also going to show their effort coordinator, shown here, the department they're assigned to. It's also going to show you statements that need certification, anything that's in progress, and then historical statements. So if you ever need to see anything from previous periods, you can find it here. It's important to note that this date, when certification begins, that date will show you the last day to certify that statement. Once the statement is certified, you'll see that date change to the last day in the period of performance. So those dates may look a little odd, depending on when you review the statement. We'll now move to the middle section of that statement. And as I mentioned, those dates on the actual statements may be a little odd. You could look here at the base effort period, and that's going to tell you the exact period of performance that we're certifying for. So I thought I would note that just as a way to confirm that information. But in the middle section of the statement in red here, there's a section that will give you kind of pertinent information about the statement. This statement, as we can see here, the boxes have been checked and the status shows as certified. So this is telling us when this was certified and by whom. So you can find that information there. In that same section, you'll also see for statements that are not certified, this one is in building status, that any information, maybe there's a proxy assigned or there is no primary effort coordinator and this can't be certified. The system won't allow certification if there's no primary effort coordinator assigned. So that information will be displayed in that area as well. Also in that middle section, you can access a number of important reports by clicking on that bar graph icon that's boxed in red there. When you click that icon, you'll see a drop-down list of reports you can select. The payroll report is one of the most important reports that we can use there. Once you select that, it will open in a different screen in your web browser, and it will look like this. So here we have a list of all the transactions, payroll transactions that went into building that summary that we looked at on the effort report, the screenshot I showed you. So this is a list of transactions by project, by date. So if you're ever doing reconciliation and you have something that stands out to you that looks like an issue, maybe you thought, well, this person was supposed to go on this project at this date, but it doesn't look like that happened. Let me go in the payroll report. You can actually see when that person was put on that project and how much they were paid from that. And so this is a good tool to use for reconciliation, or if you ever have any issues that you're trying to research. On the same lines of reconciliation, this would be on your effort statement. There's a percent value or a dollar value sign or link here where you can toggle between percentages and actual dollars. So if you're trying to reconcile something quickly, you say, I thought this person was supposed to be paid X dollars on this award. You toggle that to dollars, you look and see, yep, that reconciles, and then you can move forward. So a quick way to do that is to move back and forth on the effort statement with that link. So now we'll move to the most important part of the middle section of the statement, which is going to show you the sponsored and non-sponsored projects or activities that this person worked on. It's also going to show you payroll, cost share, computed effort, and certified effort. So these are all of the things that we really are going to be paying attention to during the effort certification process. We're comparing certified effort to computed effort. And so the payroll and cost share percentages added together are going to give you the computed effort, which is equal to what's in payroll and what was pulled into eCert to build the statement. Certified effort is going to show you how the employee actually certified, which is their confirmation of how they spent their time. One key note on this is this yellow circle here. That allows you quick access to the payroll report for that particular project. So if you see that, you can click on it, and that's kind of a shortcut to move to that payroll report. But as you can see here, this statement is certified. The person clicked these boxes, which would give them the certify button. They've clicked that, they've done what they need to do. And now we would be, as the effort coordinators, reviewing certified effort versus computed effort, and that type of thing. So this is the main part of the effort statement here that we would be looking at for certification purposes. The bottom section of the statement provides multiple drop-down boxes where you can enter notes or attachments that support the actual certification. What we have listed here, transactions, that's going to give you a list of all of the payroll transactions that went into building the statement. It's also going to show you, again, who certified the statement and when that happened or when it changed statuses. So if you ever have a question about that, you can go into the transaction tab and look at that. Maybe a PAT was submitted. You can look in there and see when that posted in the eCert. It's also important to note that there's a yellow star beside any drop-down box that has data in it. So the notes and attachments has no data, but the transactions, activity log, email log, those all do. Another important part of that bottom section of the statement is the activity log. That's going to show you a timestamp and the name of anyone who reviewed the statement. So if you have if you're ever concerned that you have a certifier who hasn't been in there to review their statement or looked at it, you can see that there. It's also a good tool to use if somebody saved a statement and you're wondering why or who did that. Then you can look in there and determine who was the last person in there and ask questions about that. So we'll now move on to effort tasks. And those effort tasks are generated when a certifier completes certification, but their certified effort is different than their computed effort on the effort statement. As I mentioned before, this is a reasonable estimate, and we do allow a 5 percentage point variance between the certified effort and the computed effort, either plus or minus, for that reason. So effort tasks won't be created if the variance is under 5 percentage points. So effort tasks can only be worked by the PEC, primary effort coordinator. So it's important that that primary effort coordinator, go in and work those tasks to make sure we're taking care of any changes that need to occur. The purpose of the effort task is for the certifier and the department to be able to review any changes and come to an agreement. Yes, we agree with this change, or we have concerns, so we need to discuss this further. If everyone agrees that the change should occur, then a PAT will be needed to true up the computed effort or salary amounts to the effort or certified effort percentage. So this is an example of someone who's certified their statement, or who will be certifying their statement. As you can see here, all these boxes are selected. This person would then click certify. Once they do that, complete certification, this is going to change to certified not processed, because their certified effort is 20%, computed effort is 0. So that is outside of the allowable variance and will create an effort task. Effort task will show up on the home page in eCert for the primary effort coordinator under their effort task tab. They will then go in and click this link, and they'll be brought to this page here, which shows all of the pertinent information, who the statement's for, the changes that were certified, and the cost transfer dollars is what the main thing we're going to be looking at here. This is going to show you the amount that you would need to adjust on the PAT should you agree to make this change. So the primary effort coordinator is going to go in here, review this. If they say, yes, this is what's needed, they'll click cost transfer needed, which will change the status of this and require a PAT. If they think, I'm not sure about this, they'll reach out to the certifier, ask the questions that they need. Maybe the certifier comes back and says, you know what, I made a mistake on this. They would go in, primary effort coordinator would go in, select do not process, which will reopen the statement for certification. So if we agree to make that change, then a true up is needed. And so effectively what we're doing is we are making the salary amount match this certified effort percentage. We'll quickly go over this calculation, but it's going to be the same amounts that were listed on that effort task that we just looked at. We'll go over this one here. So a decreased effort scenario on 5101924. So this project here, we can see that 100% of the salary was charge error, but it was certified at 25%. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the total salary found here. We're going to multiply that by the certified effort percentage. Then we're going to subtract the total computed effort in dollars from that amount. And that leaves us with $15,843.74 that needs to be removed from the grant. So we'd make that adjustment on the PAT on this project to make sure that we have 25% computed effort. We do the same for the other two projects, but for the sake of time, you know, the calculation is the same, so we'll move forward. Another key tool that can be used by the department during the certification process is the department dashboard in eCert. So the department dashboard is a good resource to determine all certifiers that are associated with your department. You'll also be able to look at award and project data there. And you could also see all effort coordinators and primary effort coordinators that are assigned to your department. So the way that you would navigate to the department dashboard is under the Manage tab, the Manage tab on the top ribbon in eCert. You would click Department Dashboard and then search on your department number. Once you do that, you'll be forwarded to this screen in which under the People tab, you'll be able to see all individuals with sponsored effort in your department under the Sponsor tab. And then non-department are going to be those associated with your department that maybe don't have a primary appointment there or that are being paid. So it's important to make sure you look at that to ensure that those are all correct. And here you have a list of icons. So you'll be able to see the status of the current statement and any past statements there. Another important tab is this Department Information tab here. When you open that, you'll be able to see all primary effort coordinator or effort coordinator assignments in your department. It's important to review that during the pre-review period and make any adjustments to that so that you're have everyone assigned there that needs to be. Updates to that have to be made in Backbone, and then those map over to the eCert system. So I mentioned the icons on the last screen. Those icons listed here, so we'll talk about what those mean. Ready for certification, that's going to mean someone needs to take action and certify that statement. Certified not processed means an effort task has been generated that needs to be worked by the PEC. Certified awaiting cost transfer means PEC agreed and accepted the change, and now a patch needed to true up the statement. Certified, no further actions needed. That statement's been certified and it's done. And then building, no action required is a status that every effort statement is in while transactions are being added to it. So no actions required for those yet. So what are some common pitfalls, common mistakes that we see during this process? First and foremost, using the project budget and the salary to drive the effort calculation. As we mentioned before, time drives that calculation. And so we need to use that as the driving force for making that calculation. Not researching payroll before making changes to statements from the certifier or from the effort coordinator. Inconsistent monitoring of effort tasks, so letting those stay out there for longer than we needed. Not checking non-department employees on the dashboard. Not taking advantage of the pre-review period to catch errors prior to the start of certification, and not reviewing or not providing proxy information prior to the start of the certification period. So what are the best practices so that we can overcome some of those pitfalls? One, we want to be meeting with employees during that 6-month period of performance to ensure that the effort or actual time that they're committing to projects, is reasonable or reconciles with the actual salary that's being charged there. It's important to have those conversations and make changes during that 6-month period so that the effort certification period goes smoother. We also ask that if you know someone is going to terminate or leave the university, that you contact us prior to them leaving so that we can open their effort statement and they can certify it before they leave. We do have that ability, and it will help everyone out by not having to assign a proxy and go through that whole process. We also ask that you submit proxy requests during the month prior to the certification period. Those should only be assigned to terminated employees or undergraduate students. And the proxy must have direct knowledge of the work completed by the employee whom they will certify for. We also don't like to assign proxies to administrative personnel, and effort coordinators or primary effort coordinators can't be assigned as proxies. Another best practice is to go ahead, frequently monitor your work list in eCert, and be proactive on those things. And last, you can always reach out, contact our team in our shared inbox listed here with any questions or concerns you may have during the effort reporting process. And now we'll turn it back over to Sam for any questions.
All right. Hey, it's actually going to be Casey
Casey,
jumping in
so-
to help with the questions. So I'll go ahead and start reading them aloud for you to answer, JR.
Okay.
So we'll start with, I've had a few instances where an employee had 2 eCert cards because he worked as both an SHRA and EHRA employee in that 6-month period. Should he approve both cards, or am I supposed to notify you all about the double card?
So it's best to speak with us about those 2 effort statements. You did correctly identify the reason for that, which is when an employee moves employee classifications during the effort period of performance from SHRA to EHRA or vice versa, 2 effort statements are created. The reason for that is generally when you change classifications, the pay rate is different. So we need to track those separately so that when we calculate the time, we can actually get the dollars to match that. The eCert system is great at allocating payroll transactions to the projects correctly, but it has a little bit of trouble doing that when an employee changes classifications, specifically just right before and right after the effective date of the change. A lot of times we'll have to go in and make a manual adjustment to those statements because eCert will apply those transactions incorrectly to the project. So we have to go in and do some further research, and we can advise on how that should be certified. So contacting us about that is best.
Awesome, thank you. So next one is, we have a number of people listed in our eCert which do not have access to their projects to reconcile. How do we have them switch to the department conducting the project?
I'm not sure if that's meaning effort coordinators or actual certifiers. So I guess I would address both of those. So if you need to add an effort coordinator to a department, that's done through Backbone. You'd have to contact the role manager in that department and have them added. And then once eCert updates the following weekend, that person would have access. Certifiers that are assigned to a department, that's a tougher one to fix. We don't have the option to update that. eCert assigns those certifiers to departments based off of the global directory. So their primary appointment in the job data screen in Connect Carolina is what drives that. So that person would have to have an EPAR submitted to adjust that. So hopefully that covers the answer to that question.
All right, and is this 5% per distribution or total distribution?
It's 5% per project. So we're looking at each individual project to determine that.
All right, then last question. So if anyone does have an additional one, please be sure to get that submitted. So the last one we have is, after a PAT is complete, how long does it take the eCert system to reflect the correction? Is it updated weekly? And if so, on which days does this take place?
So eCert updates, meaning it pulls in the changes from the PATs over every weekend. So we also have to take into account that PATs don't run every day. They run based off of the PAT processing schedule that's put out by Commitment Accounting. So depending on when that PAT's submitted and approved, hopefully it would pull in over the next weekend. However, if PATs are not running after that's actually approved, then it may be, a week and a half or 2 weeks later that you see that in eCert. So it's a timing thing based off of that.
Okay, that might follow into this next question of, why is effort certification done every 6 months? Why not every 3 months or fewer, since effort can change every month or 2 months for some PIs?
So it is at the discretion of the university as to how that happens. However, the main reason we do it every 6 months is because that is an adequate amount of time to determine how that effort is actually going to play out. And then if we do it any sooner than that, it really becomes an administrative burden on really everybody that's part of the process. So doing it more frequently, would take up a lot of time and resources from the university, which would be difficult to provide and manage.
All right, we did get a couple more in. So is it correct in stating, regardless of how a position is set up, whether it is an hourly or temporary position, or as a percent of effort, if the individual works on a grant, they will have an e-certification to complete?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
With the exception of if someone goes through what used to be called the Tar Heel Temp program. I forget what the name of it is now. If someone is a temp through that agency, then certification is not required, but that's the only exception.
All right. So I'm listed as the PEC for departments I have nothing to do with. How can I get this corrected so that I'm only responsible for certifications in my home department?
So you would need to contact the role manager in Backbone for those departments you should not be assigned to, have them remove your assignment as the PEC, and then you could send an email to our eCert_, help inbox, and then I can make the adjustment in eCert as well to go ahead and take you off of that.
All right. When we're calculating an average effort, should we only be looking at each 6-month effort period, or should we be looking at the entire grant year?
That one, it's kind of that one's an interesting question because, you know, we're reporting on the grants for a full year. So when you do your RPPR, you would want to see 10% there. Ideally, we would want to see that 10% reflected in that 6-month period, but we do allow that 5% variance. So technically that could be certified at 5% and it would still be acceptable to the sponsor because it's within that 5 percentage point variance. So it could vary a little bit and still be compliant.
Last question we've got. When completing a progress report for a sponsored project, we have to list the calendar months for each person who worked on the project, 1 calendar month or more for the project period. Can you go over how to calculate this using eCert if the project period is September 1st, 2021 to August 31st, 2022? And is there a reference document somewhere for how to do this?
That kind of spans between our team and the research admin team in our department. So that one, I would probably like to talk with our research admin team before providing an answer on, just to make sure I'm not saying anything that would be incorrect from what they're wanting folks to do.
But if we have no further questions, we will complete this session. I do want to say thank you again to JR for this presentation, as well as to all of our attendees for joining us today.